Wanted to get started, and as we talked about in the beginning of the program, we want to talk to you a little bit today about mobile service management. How many of you are familiar with the concept of mobile service management by show of hands? Okay, so it seems like sort of a new, maybe a little bit of a new concept to many of you. Before we get to that, what we hear about as we're talking to customers in the public sector, in the private sector, large and small, is that there is this concept of being 100% mobilized, of making sure that every employee, every airman, every contractor that's touching the organization has access to mobile technology. And when you start to think about a world where everybody has access to these mobile technologies, in addition to all of the things we spoke about today regarding security, talking about frameworks and applications, there's this other side of the coin, which is really the back end. What do you do for managing the environment? How do you take care of support calls? How do you make your IT organization, your operations environment more effective and more efficient? So, a few questions. By a show of hands, how many of you have service level agreements in place for your mobile deployments today? Why don't you guys look around the room real quick at all your buddies in the back and how many hands are going up? Not too many. Well, talking to a lot of the analysts and just following the patterns, if you look at the patterns as you move from mainframe to client server, from client server to web applications, and now from web applications to mobile applications, the pattern will probably be the same. And the analysts are predicting that in the next 18 to 24 months, this will start to become one of the priorities that's going to hit the CIO list. You know, what are our service level agreements? Think about what happens in your organization as you start to deploy applications that are not just individual productivity applications, but are mission critical applications. What's going to happen to the service levels that are required? Okay, this is a tough question. Anybody here worried about mobility costs by a show of hands? Is that it? Okay. So, what we typically find is this ends up being one of the major challenges with mobility right now. As people are putting together their strategies, they've been involved in many projects. I think we talked before that mobility has been in a pilot for a very long time. And one of the things that's happening is that people have many deployments of mobility, maybe multiple different types of mobility deployments inside their organization, and the costs are starting to become something they're concerned about. Because as you have more and more costs just to deploy mobility, it takes away from being able to get to really solving the problems that you're trying to address with mobility. So some of the things we're going to look at today in this conversation is really thinking about what's happening with mobility. You know, I think what we will see is that mobility is really becoming part of core IT. Much in the way you don't talk that much about web applications today, because it's just part of the fabric, a part of the core IT element, mobility is heading in that direction. We're going to talk about a concept of total cost of ownership for mobility called the mobility cost of ownership. And this is something that in a lot of conversations that we've had talking to customers around the world, getting a handle on the actual cost, being able to track this, and look at programs that we can implement to reduce the cost, this is really an important area to take focus on. We're going to highlight the support load. We're going to look at support calls and how organizations can help reduce the load that mobility is placing on their help desk organization. This is often overlooked, but has a pretty big impact on the success of mobile deployments. And then I think in the fourth takeaway is that we're starting to see more and more of a shift away from project-based mobility to really mission-critical mobility. So it's moving out of the small department and moving to the broader organization enterprise level. One of the things that we've seen over time is that really mobility there's no on-off switch, and it's really a continuum of activity and advancements. Some organizations may actually see themselves in multiple phases all at the same time, depending on department, from one department to the next. But typically, we're starting off with mobility. It's really about how do I get control of my device? How do I get control of my apps? And I would say that 90%, 95% of organizations have started clearly with the killer app of email, contact, and calendar. But then eventually they decide, this is great, we have a small footprint available, we feel comfortable that we've been able to secure the environment, control the environment. Now we want to take the next step and want to start talking about collaborative mobility. That's small work group productivity. That's when I may want to start sharing applications or sharing content in a group. What starts to happen at this level in an organization from a support perspective is that you now have more users and you have more apps. The complexity from an operation perspective has grown exponentially. Now, a lot of people get to this phase and haven't really thought through this, because in the first step, when you're really just looking at messaging, people may say, well, it's just email. It's not, doesn't have to be sub-second response time. But when I start moving to an application or sharing content from one group to another, this starts to change, and the need for best practice IT management becomes prevalent. Finally, you start to look at and say, what if I start to take my traditional workflows, my traditional business processes, and I start to put those into the mobile environment? If I take something simple, maybe a time reporting system, and I mobilize that, because I think that can bring some benefit to me. When somebody walks off a job, they can enter in their time right away. Makes it easier for us to collect the information. We have real-time data. Well, when I start to do this, maybe I'm doing transactions. Maybe we have some customers that are using this, using mobile technology to help get funding to people that are in need. When we're out in the field, we're investigating maybe a disaster. See a disaster, they want to make sure they get funding. They start having real-time mission-critical applications. What really becomes important is how reliable is that environment. This gets back to your service level agreements. So when you think about all this, we start looking at the complexity that's introduced to the environment, and the complexity, the cost, and really the associated risk can go up very much in a geometric fashion. And this is what we've seen over many years of being focused on trying to help people in the back office, help the IT organizations, help the support organizations, help people in finance really get a handle on what's happening in the mobile, in their mobile evolution, in their mobile maturity. And really what we're trying to do, and what we are doing with our customers, is providing a set of best practices and technologies, a solution that allows you to understand what's happening in your environment, make better decisions, reduce costs and risk. What ends up happening when you do that is that you start to actually take costs out of the system that can be applied to building new applications and trying new things with mobile. Now, we all agree that trying to have the most cost-effective mobile environment is very important. This for this group, based on I think the question about how many people have actually deployed BYOD, this may be a rhetorical question, but obviously in the market, BYOD was much about saving cost. There was this initial concept that by having an end user bring a device and let them pay for their own data plan, I was going to save significant sums of money when it came to mobility. Well, that's true in some cases. Of course, you have the risk that's introduced from a security perspective that adds cost of how I address that. Most people only focus on the device and the data plan, and they forget about this other side, the internal costs. Costs that are associated with training, with the labor, the help desk as we talked about, with operations, with buying that security software. That cost amounts to about $700 per device per year. I'm not sure if any of you have looked at this. This is some of the research that we did with our own customer base, and it was collaborated and corroborated with several analysts, including Gartner, Help Desk Institute, and others. But this is what we found, what we're seeing. So when we go back to our mobility curve, and you think about when you first start, your first deployments tend to be pilot deployments. 500 devices or so, 250 devices. So if it's costing me $1,900 a year or $200 a year, at that level of deployment, this may not be significant dollars for your organization when you look at the total scale and total cost that you have. But if you start to scale up to large deployments, and I know this is a very large number, but even just if you go from 500 to 1,000, 2,000 type of deployments, these numbers start to grow very substantially. So when you have a small deployment, the support load is easy to hide. It's not really noticed. Nobody's really counting it. But as you go up to these larger deployments, this starts to become real dollars, real investment. We hear conversations, we've had conversations with customers over the years, and you hear time after time where not understanding what's going to happen to support has really stopped, halted, caused their mobile initiatives to fail. Because the end user had an application, they made a phone call, they weren't serviced properly, they had a bad experience, they stopped using the application. So if we could provide capabilities to deliver information, actionable information, allow people to reduce the amount of calls to the help desk, to reduce the outages, if we can do all that, then we have an ability to dramatically impact this cost, this hidden cost that's really on the operational side. And that's something that Good has invested in with their mobile service management product. So we did a quick case study here. We had a large, this was actually a bank, and they had a Good deployment. They had one IT staff that was using the Good mobile service management capability, and that one IT staff was able to manage a 12,000 device deployment. Now, it was a large bank, so they had another initiative that had started. There was a pilot program to see if they could leverage another program. And they started off and they deployed that platform, and they had a single IT staff for 1,000 devices. They found that when they grew that deployment to 3,000 devices, they had to add 2 more headcount to take care of that environment. Because they had for this particular environment, they had no visibility. They spent a lot of time troubleshooting, firefighting, in that platform. And so when you look at this and you say, well, if the alternative solution were to grow to the 12,000 devices, I'm sure this math doesn't work out exactly, but I'm going to end up needing, what's that, 4 times 3? I'm going to need 12 people to do the work that one is doing, who is properly empowered with visibility through a mobile service management solution. So when you look at that, in this case study, the organization was able to project that they were going to save over $1 million really in support and operational cost by staying with the Good environment because of that visibility. Now, one note I'll make is that the Good mobile service management solution not only supports Good, but also because we recognize that Good is deployed in combination with other devices, whether they're BlackBerries or if they're deployed with other alternative security solutions. The MSM solution has the ability to look across BlackBerry, ActiveSync connected devices, so if you have Mobile Iron or AirWatch, as well as the Good platform. So it's a single platform that allows you to see across your entire mobile deployment. So as a takeaway, if any of you are interested to play around with these costs, we have built a calculator, an analyzer. It's the Mobile Cost of Ownership Analyzer, and that's available on the Good website at this URL. It's a great tool. Obviously, this is based on industry standards, but the simple questions, you have to understand what some of your costs are, and if you apply, enter your costs into the calculator, it will determine your projected costs, your potential cost savings by leveraging a mobile service management solution. It also will allow you to print out it's about a 10-page report, which is a very nice report that if you are trying to explain this to other people in your organization, it's a very nice takeaway for you within your organization. So here's another question. Have you ever deployed a system that never caused a help desk call? Show of hands. Anybody? Yeah, I didn't think so. I mean, it's IT. There's a lot of moving parts, especially when you talk about mobility and think about all of the different moving parts in the mobile ecosystem of getting a simple email to your device, all of the different hops that has to happen in order to get that email there. And if any one of those break, the phone's going to ring. So we've done some studies. We've worked with people. This is actually research from Gartner. And they were trying to get some handle on this the mobile support challenge. And they did a study. They found out that 42% of the people surveyed, they surveyed 400 organizations, and they found that 42% had no idea what the support load was on their organization based on mobility. 42%, that's a large number. How many of you know what kind of support burden mobility is putting on your help desk organization? By a show of hands, do you guys, are people tracking that? Is anyone tracking support tickets for mobile? Not yet. They found that 81% of the people that were looking at it found a significant impact on the load. So if support people are starting to take calls for mobile calls, what are they doing, or what aren't they doing? What other calls are they not being able to address? Are they spending less time? Are they escalating more calls? What kind of challenges is this introducing to your organization? And as you go further and further down the mobile maturity curve, and you start to build and deploy applications, you can imagine that this will become more and more complicated and more expensive. So recommendations, this is what we're hearing from our customers, from systems integrators that we work with, organizations like that provide managed services are telling us, make sure you track your mobile metrics. Make sure you get some sense on what kind of support burden you have. We hear that you should at least minimally consider that you're going to have 2 calls per year per user or per device. Right? And I think everybody raised their hand. Everybody has multiple devices. So start doing the math. You can imagine the number of help desk calls that are going to happen will skyrocket quite dramatically. Build out a knowledge base. So leverage the fact that your help desk is answering these questions. Leverage some of the social tools that are available to really build out a knowledge base that allows you to more quickly resolve issues and keep the customer happy. And then consider revising a chargeback model based on the support tickets. So if you have a way to look at those support tickets and you can allocate those support costs to particular departments, charge them back. That's a great way for those departments to spend more time in training, to think more about who's getting a device and how they're using that. And then finally, we would definitely recommend, whether it's good MSM or some other solution, that you should deploy a mobile service management solution of some sorts. Because at the end of the day, this is something that this is going to happen. One of the other things that we've been able to do, and maybe as a takeaway, we have done studies. There's information out there about the type of mobile issues. So these range from policy issues, permissions, so people forgetting passwords, having to replace devices, lost or stolen devices. All these things tend to make their way up to the help desk. So VIP calls into the help desk and says they're not getting emails or calendar. VIP rep has the person answering the phone doesn't have any visibility. What happens? What do they say when the VIP calls? Everything looks great from here. What ends up happening is this massive fire drill because it's a VIP that had a problem, and it's extremely inefficient because do you know what the first step is? The first step is to prove it isn't me. It isn't my, if I'm the email guy, it's not email. If I'm the server guy, it's not me. If it's the firewall guy, it's not me. That's the first step that takes place because of the political impact of, it was your piece of that whole provisioning infrastructure that went down and caused the outage for the VIP. This is really hard. It's a really hard problem. We talked about this a moment ago, but when you think about getting an email from your back end to your front end, think about getting application data from your back end to your front end, think about all of the different elements that information has to transcend. Back end servers, proxy service firewalls, a NOC, carrier, all the way to the device. All kind of different problems can happen up on the front end. You can have calendar failures, you can have sync failures, all kinds of things. You can have issues with your carrier, you can have slow or no coverage. All these things could have caused that VIP problem. NOC issues, firewall proxy issues, maybe there's an MDM gateway issue, high command volumes if you're using ActiveSync, maybe you have a BES issue. All of these things can be happening, and the symptom is the same thing. You're not getting email, you're not getting calendar, you're not getting your application data. How do you solve that problem? There's a lot of complexity in there. So with MSM, what we've done is we look at all of that infrastructure end to end. We understand that. We understand things that are happening inside the firewall and things that are happening outside the firewall. End users get quite frustrated when you ask them to reboot their device only to find out that there was an issue perhaps with the carrier. Because most people know that you can't reboot the carrier by rebooting your device. And IT loses credibility. There's a gentleman named J.P. Finney, one of our systems integrator partners that uses our solution in a managed service fashion, and he talks about the concept of IT capital. IT capital, or political capital basically, is that every time one of those things happens where you have a user do something they don't think results in a fix or was a waste of time, you lose IT capital. When you lose IT capital, it makes it harder for you to do the next thing. It makes it harder for you to request money to get the proper servers, to build out the environment to try something new. So with our mobile service management, I don't know if you can read this or not, but the idea is to try to take all of this continuous 24/7 monitoring. We collect lots of metrics inside and outside of the firewall. We do a bunch of analytics on that information, and then we tie it into a knowledge base. So we make plain English what's going on. So in this case, Jeffrey Bryant would call the help desk. The help desk would basically know that Jeff Bryant has 4 devices. You can see 4 devices up there in the upper right. It tells in plain English what the problem is, and it gives recommendations on how to fix it. This reduces support calls or support time, reduces escalations, it improves the end user experience. The Help Desk Institute will actually tell you that 90% of the perception of the quality of the solution is not whether or not it breaks, it's how well you take care of the end user when something breaks. So a solution like this helps improve the end user perspective and perception quite dramatically. Other things that are really important, we see a lot of organizations that are moving to one step beyond the support desk, and they want to get out to do user self-service. They want to give the user, the end user, the ability to take the first step in troubleshooting, fix some of their own problems. So with the good MSM solution, we actually have that kind of capability. This example shows somebody that wants to migrate from one device to another device, so we have a secure workflow, an audited workflow that allows you to deprovision one device, make sure that that is correctly wiped, and then allow you to start to provision the other device. This allows the end user to serve themselves, and obviously you can imagine the cost savings when you implement a solution like that. So we looked at, in another one of our case studies, we looked at some of the key metrics that IT operations teams look at, and one is the average call duration and the other is escalations. And before this organization deployed the good MSM solution, they found that the average call time was 30 minutes. And the escalations, they escalated about 80% of the cases. Now every time you escalate, the cost of that issue goes up and up. With the good MSM solution, they were able to drop the first call down to about 5 minutes, well, not the first call, but the call time down to 5 minutes, and the escalations down under 20%. So it's a pretty dramatic impact on the cost. If you start doing the math, it has a powerful impact. So in this particular case, they were able to save $1.5 million in what they expected with planned cost, because they implemented a solution that collected the data, that did the analytics, that automated this process, and allowed the human capital to do more things that were more productive, to take that money and apply it to building applications and building a better mobile environment. So along the lines of questions, you know, I'd imagine I know the answer to this one. Have you ever deployed a system that never had an outage? Probably not. Again, same kind of concepts. Our recommendations on this are kind of follow the same as it does for support. Make sure you track your operations metrics, you know, uptime metrics, those kind of things. You need to plan for some level of downtime. And one of the challenges I think that's in bullet 2 here is really important to think about is that with mobile, one of the unique aspects of mobility management from an operations perspective is that there are issues that affect very small pockets of users, individual users. And those are very expensive because you may have 3 or 4 individual users with the same problem, but you can't, it's hard to correlate that. And you have to invest a significant amount of one-on-one effort to get those individuals back up and running. Without a system that aggregates and correlates all that information, it becomes very costly to manage that. Recognize that there are challenges with the traditional systems management. You probably all have some form of systems management in your organization right now because that's a best practice. You've done that for your SAP implementations, you've done that for your server farms, you've done that across the board. You have systems management technologies. Most of those are based on things that are deployed inside your firewall. Most of those solutions are focused and think in server-centric concepts. What's important for mobility is to think about the end user, to think about a mobile user, and to think about that whole provisioning infrastructure that includes elements inside your firewall and elements outside your firewall. So you have to take a look at that. You know, perhaps your existing systems management vendor may have some solutions, but most likely they're not really looking at this whole end-to-end challenge. Of course, disaster recovery and high availability is important, and we would highly recommend, whether it's good MSM or another solution, do strongly consider deploying an operational management solution that gives you that 7/24 visibility. So, you know, again, looks like the system's down, what's wrong? So here's a call coming in from the CIO. I don't know who's impacted and why. Again, huge fire drill, why? Again, we have this very complex environment from an operational perspective. How are we going to take care of that? So when you start looking at mobile service management, what is it really all about? It's about having regular operations monitoring so that it's kind of like your cardiac monitor. I want to know what the health of my environment is. I don't want to just know what it is right now. I'd like to understand the trend. Right? I want what concept called baselining. So how does my system normally behave on Tuesday afternoon? Because it's going to behave differently on Tuesday afternoon than it does on Saturday afternoon. I need to understand that. So this cardiac monitor with context is really important. I need to be able to do that anomaly detection, so that gives me some early warning. So I may be able to detect things. Good MSM. Quite often we hear our customers tell us that we heard of issues, or we found issues, we identified issues before any other systems management tool that they had, even if it wasn't mobility related, because it may be one of some of the other elements, you know, firewalls or things like that, proxies. We'll sometimes detect that first. But you hear time and time again that our approach allows for a proactive alert that gives IT operations time to start resolving the issue before the users start calling, and many times even avoiding any kind of user downtime. The automation that we built in place with the knowledge base allows us to collapse troubleshooting, speed that. We're also able to, because we understand the environment where things break down, we're able to reduce the chronic failures you have in an environment, something that you should definitely consider. This is what the dashboard looks like. We have alerts that are part of this. This is kind of like an X-ray for somebody in operations. You know, you're able to look at this very quickly. Without a significant amount of training, you can determine where issues are and how to fix them very quickly. So once we've operationalized all this, now we can control our costs and reduce our risk. You know, another case study, this is a great case study where they looked at their deployment before they deployed the good MSM solution. Then afterwards, they were able to drop their number of tickets from 174 tickets on average down to 69 tickets. That was because they were able to improve the overall operational integrity of their environment, because they understood where the hotspots were, where the chronic problems were, who the chronic users, who the chronic carriers were. They were able to reduce the cost per ticket from $62 down to $28, and they were able to reduce the escalation rate in this organization from 53% down to 18%. All of these had a powerful impact on that organization, their ability to save money. So we go back to this, you know, again, just think about this in your environment. You are going to continue to add devices, I expect. You will continue to pursue applications and ultimately add applications to the environment. Obviously, introducing the complexity, a mobile service management, whoever's it is going to help you take some of that risk out, help you drive to the economies of scale, and let you really move through to get to that transformational mobility that we've talked about quite a bit. So that was a lot of words. It's a little warm up here, so hopefully I haven't warmed you guys up too much. But are there any questions about anything, any of the points that I've made? None? Okay. Did anybody find this information interesting? Okay. Good. Okay. So there are, we'd love to talk to anybody about the service management aspects of this, especially as you start to think about migrating from just an email type solution to small group collaboration to mobilizing existing business process to transformational. We'd love to talk to you about that. So with that, I'm going to conclude the MSM presentation. I'm going to step into my other role as sort of, I guess, the MC for the event. I want to thank all of the folks that have helped us put this event together, our partners specifically, our partners and our sponsors. There will be lunch served in the room next door. You'll have a chance to, ask some questions, understand more about the presentations that were made. The fireside chat with George will be over there. You'll be able to talk to the folks from Excellion, Acronis, Eternity, BoardPad. All these folks are over next door. I really hope that you'll take some time to network with them, talk about what you're trying to do, get some perspective. Also hope that you take the opportunity to, this is a great group of people here. Everybody is really focused on the same type of things of how do we leverage mobility to its maximum? How do we get the most benefit from the investments that we're making? So I hope you'll be able to do that. And I just want to end with a few closing thoughts. I think, I started the conversation and I said, one of the good is really, through the leadership of Christy Wyatt, we're definitely trying to change good. We're trying to do the Pont de Neuf, the new bridge, and hopefully it doesn't say 1394. And that's really part of thinking about good in a little bit of a different way. Some of you may know good as email synchronization, way, way, way back. When they were back in 2005, when the Supreme Court was getting involved and was going to shut BlackBerry down, people were pulling out their Palm Trios, and good technology was part of that solution. Most of you know good for GFE. Obviously, through the course of our conversation today, you start to understand good as this good dynamics platform. And we used words like platform and framework, and I'm not sure that that's the benefit of that is easily understood all the time. But I have, in my past life, I came from a company called BEA Systems that built a Java application server. And basically what they did is they took a collection of services that were going to be needed over and over again for web applications, and to allow the smart people inside your organization to stop focusing on plumbing and to start focusing on the business problem. Because IT is not for the benefit of IT. IT is for the benefit of business, for the mission, for the benefit of government. And I'm so excited about good, and I hope you were able to see some of this today, but I am so excited about where good is going, because they have the vision of pulling together all of these services so that your really smart people don't have to focus on security. They know it's there. They don't have to worry about building messaging, a messaging stack, so that they can have messaging as part of their very unique workflow that they're going to build to transform the way you do business, the way you reach your constituents. What good is doing is trying to take all of the hard stuff out of what you have to do as best that they can. Trying to elevate it so you can focus closer and closer to solving the real business problems, the real mission problems that you're challenged with on a day-to-day basis. We cannot do it on our own. We have a great group of partners. As we mentioned, we have over 60 ISV partners that do wonderful things, that have leveraged our technology. They have great ideas and great innovations. I hope you'll take the time to speak with them. That same platform is being used by Good for our own applications. That's the conversation we had about G3. And of course, we talked about 1,300 custom applications that are being built by customers right now that integrate the Good applications, the Good services, as well as third-party ISV applications. I know it's an awful lot, but where we're going with mobility as a platform, mobility as core IT, this app server concept this set of services is what's going to help people actually get to realize that benefit in a much quicker, more reliable way. And I hope that through the course of our conversation today, and I hope it really was a conversation, I know we didn't have lots of questions, but I really want to turn good into a conversational partner, somebody that can be your trusted advisor, somebody that can help you solve your mission-critical mobility needs.